In this tutorial, we'll have a look at how to tackle a simple question using exam board pseudocode. The first thing you need to do with these situations is to read and understand the problem that is being set. So we're being asked to write pseudocode that could collect donations of cash being put in a bucket until the total is over £20 and output the largest single donation made during the collection. So what's going on here? We have a collection bucket. We're going to put amounts in. Someone might put in 10 pence, someone might put in £2, and so on. So we keep collecting money until the total amount in the bucket is more than £20. Okay, it says over £20. £20 exactly would not do. That's an important thing to consider. So we're going to apply the Dalico method here. We start by declaring and assigning some values. We choose our loop, we input and calculate, and finally we output our answer. So let's start with declare and assign. What are the things we'll need to keep track of during this problem? We're collecting donations, so that sounds like a good place to start. Our keyword, declare, is in capital letters. All of the keywords that we use in pseudocode should be written in capital letters. So I'm going to declare donation, and that is going to be of type real. Now I could make donation an integer and count the whole number of pennies that I'm going to use, but because I might be using pounds and pence, I'm going to use something that can have a decimal point. So anytime you have money, think carefully about whether you should count in whole pennies or whether you should use a real number for the decimal parts. I'm going to have the donation, and I also need to have a total amount. So it would make sense to declare at the same time donation and total of type real. Now, is there anything else I need to keep track of? Do I need to keep track of who is donating, how many people have donated, what the average is? No, I'm not asked to count how many donations there are, but I am asked to find the largest single donation. And that again will be a real number. So donation, total, and biggest are all declared in one line here. I then need to assign the Dalico declare assign. So I need to assign starting values. And obviously the total should start out at 0. Because it's a real number, it might help to write it as 0.00 to show that it will have a decimal point. Do we need to have a start for the donation? Well, no, we're going to collect donation from the user, so we don't need to give it a starting value. But what about biggest? Well, biggest, we're going to start and we're going to give it a starting value. We could give it a starting value of 0. The biggest donation is 0. But I like to start off with biggest being ridiculously small. And in actual fact, I'm going to make it minus £9.99. And what this shows us is that it is an unattainable number that is so small that couldn't be given in one of the donations. Notice when I've been doing this that Word has highlighted and capitalized my variables. Watch out for this if you are typing up your code. You need to be consistent in the way that you declare and use later in your code. So I've declared and I've given starting values by assigning. I now need to think about my loop. When you're choosing your loop, you start off and think, do I know how many times I'm going to repeat? And if so, you would use a for next loop. Do we know how many donations there's going to be? No, we don't, so we can't use a for next loop. The next thing we can use is a repeat until. I could repeat until the donations are over £20. Now that's going to work fine unless there's the possibility that we might have no donations at all, in which case a while loop would be the best option. In this case, we can use our repeat loop. So I start with repeat, and I'm going to do that until total is greater than £20, 20.00. Between the repeat and the until is where the main block of my code goes. So I've chosen my loop, declared, assigned, chosen loop. I now need to think about input and calculations. Anytime we're going to input, you should always prompt the user first. So I'm going to tab in so that I've got indented code. And I'm going to say that, first of all, I should prompt the user. So I'm going to print enter a donation. And then I'm going to input donation. So I've declared, I've assigned, I've chosen my loop, and now I've got some input to collect information from the user. I now need to think about my calculations. And in this case, there are two calculations that need to be done. We need to check that we have added money to the donations overall. That's a summing calculation. And we need to make sure we know which is the biggest single donation. The summing is quite straightforward. Total takes the value total plus donation. So I'm adding what was given to what's already there. And again, notice I have to fix my capital T. That's my sum, which is a fairly standard piece of code. I then need to think about finding the biggest single donation. So I've got to ask whether the current donation is bigger than what's gone before. I do that with an if. If donation is greater than biggest, then, and again I'm going to indent here. So if my current donation is bigger than my biggest donation, then I got to apply that to be the new biggest. So biggest becomes donation. I'm going to fix the capital B. That's all there is to that. You could maybe print something like new highest donation is. But you don't need to. The question doesn't ask you to tell each time a new highest is made. So we could just say end if after we've worked out the calculation. I'm going to keep adding things on until the total goes above £20. And at the end of it, so DALICO, O is for output. Having done all of the programming in here, you need to let the user know what the results are. So finally, I'm going to then say print. We have over £20 with a highest single donation of, put a pound sign in there, and then biggest. So running through my Dalico checklist, D for declare, A for assign, choose the correct form of loop. Inside the loop, you need to do some input. You need to do some calculations that fit the scenario you've been given. And finally, after your loop, you're very probably going to have to do some output to give the results.